Tonight, we begin with a development that intelligence officials across the globe had feared, anticipated, and desperately tried to prevent. A strike that unfolded not over days or weeks, but in mere minutes. Minutes that shattered a carefully guarded compound. Minutes that sent shockwaves through every capital in the Western world. Minutes that rewrote the rules of modern warfare in the Middle East forever. What Iran did today crossed a line that Washington had hoped would hold firmly in place. And when that line broke, Israel did not hesitate for a moment. They responded with precision, with fury, and with a message that no one watching could possibly misunderstand. For months now, there had been signals, not from official Iranian state broadcasts, not from formal diplomatic channels, just whispers and movements that Iran was preparing something unprecedented and deeply alarming. Iran has been aggressive, yes, but they have always been calculated in their aggression. Their moves have followed a certain rhythm, a predictability, almost a pattern that analysts could read. But what set off alarm bells in Washington this week was that the pattern went completely silent. Intelligence officers who monitor Iranian military activity know the indicators all too well. The movement of mobile missile launchers to forward positions. The sudden activation of encrypted communication channels. The repositioning of naval assets in the Persian Gulf. The sudden withdrawal of senior commanders from known locations. All of that went quiet in the last 72 hours. And whenever Iran goes quiet like that, it means something is about to get very loud. The silence was deafening, and every intelligence agency understood exactly what it meant for the region. Early this morning, satellite reconnaissance detected what they described as a rapid launch sequence from multiple sites inside Iranian territory, including mobile platforms that had not been activated in over 3 years. These are the kinds of advanced weapons systems that Iran only deploys when they are signaling something very specific. Either an escalation beyond anything previously attempted, a direct challenge to Israeli deterrence, or a fundamental shift in their entire military strategy. Western observers did not know which category this fell into, or whether it fell into all three at once. But what they did know was that Iran was changing its posture in dramatic and undeniable fashion. And when a state actor with nuclear ambitions shifts its military posture without any diplomatic explanation, even by the smallest measure, every intelligence agency on Earth pays immediate attention. The warning issued by the Pentagon tonight was not normal by any standard. It was not routine. It was not symbolic in any way. It was urgent and deeply alarming. Senior officials, after an emergency National Security Council meeting, described Iran's move as provocative, unprecedented, and dangerous. Perhaps most importantly, they called it dangerous because it targeted not a military base or a weapons depot, but a leadership compound where senior Israeli defense officials were known to gather for strategic planning sessions. But provocation only works if the target hesitates and freezes. Israel did not. In fact, their response today was among the fastest and most devastating we have seen in the entire history of this conflict. Within 11 minutes of confirmed missile detection, Israel activated its most advanced layered defense systems and launched immediate retaliatory strikes against Iranian positions. These were not the standard Iron Dome interceptors that the world has grown accustomed to seeing on television screens. These were Arrow 3 exoatmospheric interceptors and David's sling systems. The weapons that Israel only deploys when they are preparing to neutralize a strategic-level threat that could fundamentally alter the balance of power. Tonight, the Israeli Defense Forces confirmed that they launched precision retaliatory strikes on Iranian military infrastructure, including a missile research facility outside Isfahan that had recently been reactivated for what analysts believe was final stage testing. Israel struck before Iran could reload or reposition any of its remaining launch platforms. They hit the launch sites that fired the hypersonic missiles. They hit the command and control centers coordinating the attack. They hit the logistics depots and supply routes that were likely preparing to support a second wave of strikes. In other words, Israel targeted the entire kill chain, Not just the weapons themselves, but the infrastructure, the communications, and the component networks that would have made a sustained Iranian assault fully operational against Israeli territory. This is what made the Pentagon's warning so urgent and so specific tonight. Iran's strike was not just symbolic posturing or political theater. It was actionable and real. It represented the kind of move that could destabilize the entire region if left unchecked and unanswered. And Israel, understanding that reality fully and completely, responded with overwhelming force. Not recklessly or without thought. Not impulsively or out of panic, but strategically and with devastating precision. They did not carpet bomb Iranian cities. They did not target civilian infrastructure. They hit military nodes. They hit command centers. And here is where the story becomes even more alarming for everyone watching. American intelligence officials now believe that Iran's latest move was specifically designed to test the speed and effectiveness of Israeli missile defense systems after months of reported technical upgrades and system modifications. Iran wanted to see whether Israel would stumble, whether gaps existed in their defensive coverage, whether the hypersonic missiles could penetrate before interception systems could react. But instead, the exact opposite happened. Israel did not stumble or show any weakness at all. They demonstrated a defensive response that was so swift, so coordinated, and so comprehensive that even Iranian military commanders noticed and were reportedly stunned by the speed. You do not get Iran's attention easily in this domain. But today, Israel absolutely did. Defense analysts speaking with international media under strict anonymity described Iran's shift as a calculated provocation, a way to probe Israeli vulnerabilities and test Western resolve simultaneously. But Israel proved today that they remain both technologically superior and operationally ready for exactly this scenario. Their interceptors were not only launched within seconds of detection, they were calibrated so precisely that multiple hypersonic warheads were neutralized at altitudes exceeding 100 kilometers above Israeli territory. That technical achievement matters enormously because it shows something Iran desperately did not want confirmed. It shows that Israel's multi-layered defense architecture can handle even the most advanced threats Iran currently possesses. It shows that Israel is not passively waiting for the next attack to come. They are actively preparing, adapting, and staying ahead. As reports continued coming in throughout the evening, we learned much more about the full scale of Israel's response. The Israeli Air Force carried out over 40 precision strikes on Iranian military positions, forcing the evacuation of at least 3 major Iranian military installations. Israeli naval forces targeted Iranian surveillance vessels that had been repositioned in the Gulf of Oman in the last 72 hours. Israeli cyber warfare units operating from classified locations reportedly disabled Iranian military communication networks used to coordinate cross-border operations with proxy forces throughout the region. This was not just a defensive response to incoming missiles. This was not just a retaliatory strike designed to send a message. This was a comprehensive military operation on multiple fronts. This was strategic dominance demonstrated in real time for the entire world to witness. And strategic dominance is the one thing Iran has struggled to maintain since the beginning of this confrontation. For every advance Iran has made in missile technology and proxy warfare, Israel has countered with something that neutralizes, degrades, or completely eliminates the advantage Iran thought it had gained. Remember, Iran thought their hypersonic missiles were fast enough to overwhelm Israeli defenses and reach their targets. They thought the element of surprise would paralyze Israeli decision-making and create chaos. They thought striking a leadership compound would create political shock and force concessions. But tonight, the exact opposite is happening before their eyes. Israeli defenses intercepted the vast majority of incoming threats successfully. Israeli retaliation was faster and more devastating than Iran anticipated. And the international community is rallying behind Israel, not pulling away from them as Iran had desperately hoped. What makes this moment so critical and so dangerous is that Iran's latest move happened at a time when Supreme Leader Khamenei is under enormous internal pressure from multiple directions. Hardliners within the Revolutionary Guard want escalation and aggressive confrontation. Reformist factions want diplomatic engagement and sanctions relief. The Iranian public wants economic relief and an end to international isolation. Regional proxy commanders want more resources, more weapons, and more direct Iranian involvement. Khamenei is balancing all these competing demands while managing a deteriorating economy and growing domestic unrest. And when leaders in that position make sudden, dramatic military moves, they are not doing it from a position of genuine strength. They are doing it from pressure. They are doing it from vulnerability and desperation. The Pentagon's formal statement, now distributed to all allied nations and partner governments, was designed to signal clearly that the United States is not willing to allow a regional war to spiral completely out of control. Senior officials said plainly that Iran's strike was inconsistent with any framework for regional stability and de-escalation efforts. That is diplomatic language for saying we consider this an act of aggression and there will be serious consequences. You do not usually hear that tone from the Pentagon unless something genuinely serious and potentially catastrophic is at stake. Meanwhile, Israel's Prime Minister addressed the nation in a firm, measured, and resolute speech tonight. He said, "We did not seek this confrontation, but we will finish it on our terms." He said our enemies should understand that every attack will be met with a response 10 times greater. He said the State of Israel will defend every citizen with every resource at our disposal. These are not rhetorical flourishes or empty political statements designed for domestic consumption. These are statements from a nation that understands just how high the stakes have become in this dangerous moment. Here is what makes the situation even more concerning tonight. Su's latest move was not isolated. Along with a hypersonic missile strike on the leadership compound, Hezbollah also launched over 200 rockets into northern Israel from southern Lebanon. Houthi forces in Yemen fired anti-ship missiles at commercial vessels in the Red Sea. Iranian-backed militias in Iraq increased drone attacks targeting American military bases. All of this happened within the same 24-hour period. When Iran moves multiple pieces on the board simultaneously, it means something much larger is underway behind the scenes. Intelligence analysts are now considering several disturbing possibilities. One is that Iran is preparing for a sustained military campaign designed to stretch Israeli defenses across multiple fronts simultaneously. Another is that Iran is attempting to create enough chaos and regional instability to force international diplomatic intervention on terms favorable to Tehran. A third possibility, the one worrying officials the most, is that Iran is using this crisis to advance its nuclear program. But today, Israel took that card off the table with devastating effectiveness. They did not wait for permission from Washington. They did not defer to diplomatic timelines or international bureaucratic processes. They did not rely solely on defensive systems and hope for the best outcome. They struck back with precision, with power, and with unmistakable strategic clarity. What we are watching now is a test of resolve on both sides. Iran wants to see how far it can push before triggering a response it truly cannot survive. Israel wants to show that no attack on its sovereignty will ever go unanswered. Washington wants to prevent a full-scale regional war that could draw in American forces directly. And the international community wants to prevent a nuclear escalation that could change the world forever. Tonight, we have heard from multiple intelligence sources who are now monitoring Iranian military movements in real time around the clock. They say Iran is repositioning remaining mobile missile assets deeper inside its territory. They say Iranian naval forces are withdrawing from forward positions in the Gulf. And they say Iran's decision to strike the leadership compound is likely part of a broader strategy intended to test international red lines. But Israel is not backing down or showing any sign of hesitation. In fact, Israel is reinforcing its forward positions and maintaining the highest level of military readiness. Their response today, swift, devastating, and precisely calibrated, sent a clear message to Iran that every escalation will be met with overwhelming force. And it sent a message to the entire international community that Israel remains capable, determined, and absolutely willing to defend itself by any means necessary against any threat it faces. As the coming hours and days unfold, we expect more details to emerge about what exactly Iran hoped to achieve. But what we do know tonight is that the Pentagon's warning was timely and critically important. It reinforced American commitment to regional stability. It put Iran on formal notice that further escalation carries enormous risk. And it gave Israel the diplomatic cover to respond with the force that the situation clearly demanded. What happens next will depend entirely on what Iran does in the next 48 hours. If they escalate further, this moment will be remembered as the beginning of a dangerous new chapter. If they pull back, Israel and the United States have already shown they are fully prepared for either outcome. They have shown they are ready to respond to whatever comes next. And tonight, for the first time in years, Iran appears to be reconsidering its calculations very carefully. Tehran is quiet, too quiet. And when Iran is quiet after a failed operation, it means they are thinking very carefully about their next move. It means they are choosing their next step with extreme caution and deliberation. Because tonight, Iran learned something they should have understood long ago. That Israel's defenses are stronger than Iran estimated. That Israeli retaliation is faster and more precise than anyone predicted. And that the world is watching every single move. This story is far from over, and the coming days will be critical for the entire region. But tonight, one thing is absolutely clear. Israel's resolve has not been shaken by this attack. Iran's gamble has not produced the result they desperately wanted. And the balance of power in the Middle East has shifted once again in ways that Tehran never anticipated. And we will be here, watching every detail, reporting every development, as the next dangerous phase of this confrontation unfolds before the world.